They tell you security is temporary, that one day you'll go through an airport without taking off your shoes, that the cameras will come down, that the surveillance will end. They're lying. And it started with one man who understood something most people still don't. That fear doesn't need to win. It just needs to never go away. Think about it. Every time you stand in that airport line, belt off, shoes off, laptop out, hands up in the scanner like you're surrendering. You don't even question it anymore. It's just what you do, what everyone does. And somewhere in that acceptance, in that quiet submission to inconvenience in the name of safety, lives the ghost of a strategy that worked better than anyone wants to admit. September 2001. The world changes in 102 minutes. But this isn't a story about that day. This is about what came after. About the man who didn't want victory. He wanted something else entirely. Because here's the thing about winning. It has an endpoint. A moment when the battle stops. When the enemy surrenders. When you plant your flag and go home. But what if you don't want it to end? What if the chaos itself is the goal? What if you understood that a superpower's greatest strength, its overwhelming force, its technological advantage, its economic might, could be turned into its greatest weakness? Bin Laden, you know the name, you think you know the story, rich Saudi, cave dweller, religious extremist, the man America spent a decade hunting, the face on the deck of cards, the #1 target. But here's what they don't tell you. He won before he died. Not because of what he destroyed, because of what he made us build. And what did we build? A machine that never stops. A security state that grows with each new threat. A military budget that compounds annually. A surveillance apparatus that knows more about you than you know about yourself. Wars that morph and rebrand but never actually end. The towers fell in 2001. It's 2026 now, and we're still fighting. Still afraid. Still building walls and watching screens and passing laws that chip away at the things we said we were protecting. 1980s Afghanistan. Bin Laden isn't a crazy yet. He's a volunteer, a logistician, a believer. The Soviets have invaded. America sends money, weapons, support. The Soviets have invaded. America sends money, weapons, support. Bin Laden helps organize the resistance. He's not the leader, not the face. He's the guy who makes sure fighters have supplies, who builds camps, who keeps records, the bureaucrat of jihad. But he's watching, learning, taking notes on how empires die. He learned something critical during those years. Superpowers don't lose because you beat them in battle. They lose because you make the war too expensive to continue. Afghanistan didn't defeat the Soviet Union with tanks. They didn't match them gun for gun. They didn't win a single major conventional battle. They defeated them with time, with endless, grinding, unwinnable conflict. Every Soviet patrol that got ambushed, every helicopter shot down, every convoy that never made it to its destination. Death by 1,000 cuts. Not a knockout punch. A slow bleed. The war cost the Soviets everything. Money they didn't have. Soldiers they couldn't replace. Public support that evaporated with each coffin that came home. The Soviets left in 1989. 2 years later, the USSR collapsed. Bin Laden took notes. He saw the pattern. You don't beat the giant by being stronger. You beat it by being more patient. By making the fight so long, so draining, so unclear in its purpose, that the giant just gives up. And here's the crucial part. The Soviets left because their people stopped believing the war was worth it. Because the economic cost became unbearable. Because even a superpower has limits. Bin Laden understood something most military strategists miss. That the real battlefield isn't the desert or the mountains. It's the living room. It's the ballot box. It's the budget committee. It's the collective will of a nation. He returns to Saudi Arabia, a war hero in his own mind. But the kingdom doesn't want revolution. It wants stability, American partnership, oil money. The royal family doesn't see a warrior. They see a problem. When Iraq invades Kuwait in 1990, Bin Laden has a plan. He offers to defend Saudi Arabia with his Afghan veterans, thousands of battle-hardened fighters, men who defeated the Soviet Union, no American troops needed, no foreign boots on sacred ground. The Saudis reject him, dismiss him. They don't trust his ragtag fighters to stand against Saddam's army. Instead, they invite 500,000 US soldiers onto sacred soil, Mecca, Medina, the Holy Lands, Christian soldiers protecting Muslim holy sites. For Bin Laden, this is betrayal. not just political, spiritual, an abomination. And this is where personal grievance meets strategic vision. This is where the wounded ego finds a philosophy to justify itself. Because bin Laden doesn't just feel rejected, he feels vindicated. His worst fears about the Saudi regime, that they've sold out, that they've become puppets, that they've abandoned their faith for Western money, confirmed. This is where things start to change. Bin Laden doesn't want to win a country. He wants to win a civilization war, and he realizes something crucial. America is not the Soviet Union. You can't bankrupt it the same way. It's too rich, too powerful, too distant. The Soviet Union was already crumbling. Afghanistan just accelerated the collapse. But America is the richest country in human history. Its economy is massive, its military unmatched, it's protected by 2 oceans. You can't invade it, you can't outspend it, you can't beat it in any conventional sense. So he builds a different strategy. Not invasion, provocation. He studies American history, Vietnam, Lebanon, Somalia. He sees a pattern. America doesn't lose wars because it runs out of soldiers. It loses them because it runs out of will. Vietnam, the most powerful military on Earth, defeated by farmers in tunnels, not because they couldn't win battles, they won most of them, but because the American public turned. Because the images on TV, napalm, body bags, protests, made the cost visible, made the purpose questionable. Lebanon, 1983. A truck bomb kills 241 American servicemen. Reagan withdraws. The mission wasn't worth the casualties. Somalia, 1993. 18 soldiers killed in Mogadishu. Clinton pulls out. The public sees the footage, decides it's not worth it. The public turns, the costs pile up, the mission blurs, and eventually, they leave. Bin Laden sees this, learns it, believes it. America will fight, will invade, will destroy, will dominate, but only for so long. Only until the cost, economic, political, human, becomes too much. The trick isn't to win the battle, it's to make the battle unwinnable, to make it endless. But because the American public turned, because the images on TV, napalm, body bags, protests, made the cost visible, made the purpose questionable. Lebanon, 1983. A truck bomb kills 241 American servicemen. Reagan withdraws. The mission wasn't worth the casualties. Somalia, 1993. 18 soldiers killed in Mogadishu. Clinton pulls out. The public sees the footage, decides it's not worth it. The public turns, the costs pile up, the mission blurs, and eventually, they leave. Bin Laden sees this, learns it, believes it. America will fight, will invade, will destroy, will dominate, but only for so long. Only until the cost, economic, political, human, becomes too much. The trick isn't to win the battle, it's to make the battle unwinnable, to make it endless. To blur the victory conditions so completely that there's no clear path to done. Here's the part no one talks about. Bin Laden didn't want to destroy America. He wanted to provoke it, to make it do to itself what no enemy could. Overextend, overspend, overreact. He wanted America to be so afraid that it would tear up its own freedoms trying to feel safe, that it would spend trillions on wars with no clear objective, that it would become the thing it claimed to be fighting against, a state ruled by fear. And look, we can debate whether this was his actual plan, whether he was that strategic, that calculating, or whether he just hated America and wanted to hurt it. But intention doesn't matter, results do. If this made you uncomfortable, good, that's the point. This channel isn't about history, it's about the parts of human nature we pretend not to see. Subscribe if you want to understand how power, fear, and control really work. Not in theory, but in real life. And the results are undeniable. US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Bombs kill over 200 people, most of them Kenyan and Tanzanian civilians. Not Americans, but the target is America. America responds with cruise missiles, strikes in Afghanistan and Sudan, millions of dollars of firepower. Bin Laden is fine, his camps are damaged, but he's alive. His message is spreading. USS Cole, Yemen, 17 sailors dead. A warship, a symbol of American power, crippled by a small boat packed with explosives. Bin Laden releases a recruitment video, celebrating the attack. His followers grow. Young men across the Middle East see the footage, see that America can be touched, can be hurt. He's testing, poking, seeing how much it takes, seeing if America will do what he needs it to do. Come to him. Because as long as America fights from a distance, cruise missiles, drone strikes, airstrikes, bin Laden can't win his larger war. He needs American soldiers on the ground, in Muslim countries, visible, occupying, creating the imagery of crusaders invading Islamic lands. He needs the propaganda, the narrative of David versus Goliath, the Muslim world versus the American empire, and he knows with absolute certainty that if he hits America hard enough, they'll come. And then, September 11th, 2001. The planes hit, the towers fall, 3,000 people dead. The world is horror, the world is rage, the world is grief and shock and disbelief. And bin Laden waits. Because this is not the victory, this is the bait, and America takes it. The response is everything he predicted, everything he needed. Afghanistan invaded. October 2001, less than a month after the attacks, justified, necessary, inevitable. The Taliban harbours bin Laden. The Taliban must fall, and they do fall, quickly, in weeks, not months. The Northern Alliance and US Special Forces sweep through. The Taliban collapses, bin Laden flees to the mountains. Mission accomplished, right? Except the mission never ends. Because once you're there, once you've toppled a government, you own what comes next. Nation building, reconstruction, stabilization. And Afghanistan isn't like Germany or Japan after World War II. It's tribal, fractured, impossibly complex. Every valley has its own power structure, every warlord his own agenda. The war drags on. Iraq invaded. March 2003. This one doesn't even make sense. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Saddam Hussein hated bin Laden. They were enemies. But the narrative shifts. Weapons of mass destruction, an axis of evil, preemptive war. The WMDs are never found, but the war happens anyway. Another government toppled, another occupation, another endless mission. Guantanamo, opened. A prison camp where the Geneva Conventions don't apply, where people are held for years without trial. Patriot Act, passed. Weeks after 9/11, hundreds of pages, barely debated, expanding government surveillance to levels that would have been unthinkable before. Your emails, your phone calls, your internet history. All fair game, all in the name of safety. Waterboarding, sleep deprivation, stress positions, techniques the US prosecuted as war crimes after World War II. Now policy, surveillance, everywhere. Cameras in cities, TSA at airports, NSA collecting metadata on everyone. $2 trillion spent. That's the conservative estimate. Some say it's closer to 3 or 4 or 6 if you count long-term costs. Hundreds of thousands dead, Iraqis, Afghans, Americans, soldiers, civilians, children. And 20 years later, after all of that, the Taliban controls Afghanistan again. August 2021, Kabul falls. The Afghan government collapses in days. Afghans cling to departing planes. Some fall to their deaths. 20 years. Thousands of lives, trillions of dollars. And the Taliban, the group we invaded to remove, back in power. Here's the contradiction. Bin Laden claimed to fight for Islam, but most of his victims were Muslim. He claimed to defend the innocent, but he made murder a sacrament, turned suicide into martyrdom, convinced young men to kill themselves and others for paradise. He spoke of justice, of defending the oppressed, of fighting imperialism, while building a machine that devoured children, that turned schools into targets, that made mosques into battlefields. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the contradiction is the strategy, because terrorism doesn't need to make sense, it just needs to provoke a response. Abbottabad, Pakistan, a compound, a raid, Navy SEALs, midnight. Bin Laden is killed, shot multiple times, body buried at sea. The world celebrates justice, closure, victory. Obama announces it on live TV. Crowds gather outside the White House, chanting, cheering. But ask yourself, what did his death change? Did the wars end? Did the surveillance stop? Did the TSA disappear? Did the defense budget shrink? No, the TSA still searches you. Every flight, Every time. You still take off your shoes because one guy tried to hide explosives in his shoes 20 years ago. The NSA still watches you, still collects your data, still monitors your communications. The wars still continue, just with different names. The war on terror becomes overseas contingency operations. The missions change, the countries change, but the troops stay deployed. The defense budgets still grow every year, regardless of which party is in power, regardless of whether there's an active war. The fear never went away, and that's the genius of it, the terrible dark genius. Bin Laden didn't need to survive, he just needed to create a system that would. A feedback loop. Attack creates fear, fear creates reaction, reaction creates resentment, resentment creates new fighters create new attacks. The cycle perpetuates itself. Doesn't need him anymore, doesn't need any single leader. Because the system is now self-sustaining. Every drone strike that kills civilians creates new enemies. Every military occupation breeds resistance. Every surveillance program alienates citizens. The machine feeds itself. He understood something most terrorists don't. You don't defeat a superpower by being stronger. You defeat it by making it defeat itself. By making it so paranoid it spies on its own citizens. So militarized it can't imagine a problem that doesn't require force. So afraid it sacrifices liberty for the illusion of security. Benjamin Franklin said it. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. We gave it up. Willingly, eagerly even, because we were afraid. Today, there are teenagers going through airport security who weren't born when the towers fell. To them, this is just normal. The surveillance, the searches, the endless warnings, the forever war. They don't remember a time when you could walk to the gate without a ticket, when you could meet people at the arrival gate, when flying wasn't a rehearsal for submission. This is the world they inherited, the one we built for them, in the name of keeping them safe. Bin Laden's cave is empty, has been for over a decade, but the world he designed, still standing, still running, still expanding. He lost his life, but he changed yours. Every time you take off your shoes at the airport, every time you see a soldier in a subway, every time your government passes another security law, every time you hear about a new surveillance program, every time a bomb drops in a country you can't find on a map, that's his legacy. Not the buildings that fell, the fear that never did. It wins by making you destroy yourself, by making you so afraid. You give up the things that made you worth defending: freedom, privacy, due process, the assumption of innocence, the right to be left alone, all traded for what? The illusion of safety, the promise that if we just watch everyone, search everyone, suspect everyone, we'll be secure. But you can't be both completely safe and completely free. That's not how it works, and we chose safety, or thought we did. Bin Laden died 13 years ago, May 2nd, 2011. A bullet to the head, body dumped in the ocean. But the war he started, it doesn't have an end date. It doesn't even have a clear enemy anymore. It just continues, feeding itself, growing, morphing. New groups rise. ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, different names, different. And we respond the same way. More bombs, more troops, more surveillance. Because we learned his lesson too well. We learned that the war never has to end, that fear is renewable, that there's always another threat, another reason to expand the security state, another justification for the latest intrusion. And maybe that was the point, not to win, just to make sure no one else could either, to create a permanent state of emergency, where normal is never coming back, where war is just background noise, where your rights are always temporary, subject to revision, pending the next threat. The longest war in American history didn't end with victory, it just stopped being news.